It feels weird to me that it's been 5 years since the first Lego movie came out. It really doesn't feel that long, but that's how long it's been, and now we're back with Lego Movie 2, although we have, of course, had the Lego Batman movie, which I liked. Lego Ninjago movie, no, not so much. This was definitely better than that, so that's a thing. This one does take place 5 years after the first Lego film, and so when we left off back at the end of the first film, it was revealed that the whole movie was just kind of in the imagination of this young boy, and it was him and his relationship with his father. And at the end, the father says, okay, you can play with these now, but your sister has to play too. And then there's the Duplo invasion, and that's when things cut off. Now this is 5 years later, where the brother and sister are kind of trying to play with the Legos together, but it's on and off again, and they fight a lot, and that's kind of represented in the Lego world, where Bricksburg has now turned into Apocalypseburg, and it's a whole kind of Mad Max riff thing, and everyone's more hardcore, and meanwhile in the Sistar system, everything's sort of like how it was in the first movie. It's all bright and happy and that sort of stuff, and things kind of kick off when Wildstyle, Batman, Metalbeard, and Benny get kidnapped, and everyone blames Emmit for it because Emmit's still too childish, and he's not gritty enough to handle this new setting, and so he let them get kidnapped, and of course he has to go on and save them, and thus starts the journey. And I definitely enjoyed this. The humor was still there. It's, meta humor, self-referential stuff, and most of it was still good. There was a few parts where it just didn't. I think especially a lot of the DC stuff, it's just between this, Teen Titans Go to the Movies, and the Lego Batman movie, I'm like, I've had enough of the DC meta humor. It's like, you can only tell me like Green Lantern sucks and Batman's dark so many times before I'm like, I got it, guys, thanks. But a lot of it was still pretty funny. There were also a few where I wasn't really sure what the joke was supposed to be, so there were definitely noticeably more misses, I think, than there were in the first film. Although, to be fair, I haven't seen the first film since it was in theaters, so it's been a while, but I definitely have fewer memories of missed jokes in that than I do from this one. But it was still enough to really keep me entertained throughout the film. I think where the film kind of let me down the most was in the themes it explored. It was a big deal in the first one. At the end, we had this reveal. It was like, oh my gosh, this is really about this kid and his dad. And it was really touching. And this one, they can't like pull the rug out like that because it's already established, what this is. And I think that really kind of played to their disadvantage. I really like where they tried to go with the relationship between this brother and sister, but the fact that they were not constant, but every once in a while there were flashbacks to the real world, and it felt like they were kind of holding your hand throughout to let you know, like, okay, here's what's happening, and I get that they couldn't ignore it completely because as the audience we do know that they're out there now, but there was a lot less of a sense of discovery for me as an audience member. I didn't get to find out the story. I was being told the story, whereas in the first one there was a little bit more putting the pieces together at the end, where it's like they reveal this is what's been happening the whole time, and then you kind of reflect back on the rest of the film and be like, oh, so that was, and you put it together, and as it comes together, it's like a really good moment of catharsis, I think, whereas this didn't really have that, and there was a lot of potential behind the themes they explored in terms of working together and what it means to grow up and how do you grow up. There was a lot of potential there, I think, and they just didn't quite hit it as well as I think they could have, and it ended up being kind of a step down from the first film in that regard. There's another character that has been brought up in some of the trailers, which is Rex Dangervest, who is another Pratt character, and it's really a play on all the roles he's had since the first Lego movie, which was before, right before Guardians, We knew he was going to be in Guardians at that point, but Guardians itself hadn't come out, and that blew up, and then it was Jurassic World and some other stuff, and I really liked the direction they went with that character. I wasn't sure just from seeing him in the trailers, but it's an interesting thing to do with him in the movie, but it's also, if you think about it in a meta sense, it's kind of feels like a battle between like the new Chris Pratt and the old Parks and Rec Chris Pratt, chubby Chris versus skinny Chris, and I have a couple friends that kind of miss some of the aspects of his older characters, and it was just very interesting because a lot of the more recent characters, I mean, we think about in Infinity War, like one of the biggest scenes, I mean, there was obviously the part where like the gauntlet and everything, but like there was when Thor came in and it was all about like, oh, well, I think I'm a man, like I can be a man like Thor, and it's like, okay, and then it's like in the opening sequence of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, he's like out in, like a tight t-shirt and some Wrangler jeans with like a beer to the side, and he's building his house in the woods, and then he goes to the bar and he's like, oh, you didn't break up with me, I broke up with you because I'm a man, and and I was like, oh. And so like seeing those Chris Pratt characters match up with Emmett was just really interesting. And I liked kind of where they ended up going with it at the end. I mean, overall, I think this is still definitely an enjoyable time. I feel like I kind of ragged on it a lot and spent most of the time just saying how it wasn't as good as the first one. That's because I don't think it was, but the first one I really, really liked. So I think saying I liked this one, but just not as much as the first one, it shouldn't really be an insult. It's still definitely an enjoyable time, even if but there are ways I think it could have been even stronger. But I would definitely, especially if you like the first one, I would definitely recommend checking this one out.